This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Sergei Pavlovich, who this past weekend at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, at UFC Fight Night Pavlovich versus Blaydes, defeated Curtis Razor Blaydes by TKO at 3:08 of the very first round. Mark, start us off here. What was your reaction to Pavlovich notching yet another knockout victory on his record?
He does it again, man. Another win, another knockout, another first-round knockout. I mean, the dude's a fucking animal. He really is. Curtis Blaydes choosing not to wrestle against that animal is the most Curtis Blaydes thing there ever was. I mean, he just does this shit. And he was doing okay, in the striking, which I'm sure is what he puts in his head of being like, I can hang here. But he's always doing okay until he's not doing okay. And that's the part that he seems to forget. So that game plan needed to be significantly more wrestling focused than it was. And I understand he's got to set it up and he's got to strike a bit. But, geez, there's got to be more wrestling urgency than that. You can't go 3 minutes just strike for strike with Sergei Pavlovich because it's not going to go well. And we all could have told you that wasn't going to go well. And it didn't. So Pavlovich was just way, way too comfortable as that fight went on, not having to think about takedowns. It was one half-hearted takedown attempt that Pavlovich shucked off after he had already kind of hurt Blaydes. Yeah. When he's that comfortable and you let him operate like that, he's going to hurt you. And, it's not the first time we've said this, but his hands are so fast. He's so accurate. He's so powerful. And it's all happening under, perfect balance. His body is always so perfectly balanced. Every step he takes, little angle he cuts, he's just he is a frightening striker. And for whatever reason, Curtis thought he could stand across from him, and it didn't work out. So it is officially now safe to say that we have a scary, scary challenger to the new reign of John Jones. If Jones does get past Stipe, you got to think now that this behemoth of a man is going to be waiting for him and that the billing for that fight is going to end up being huge. 6 straight first-round knockouts for Pavlovich, as I just said. So we will see if that's the point we get to. But, I mean, Sergey has ascended about as high as you can ascend at this point.
Omar, give us your assessment of Sergei Pavlovich as a heavyweight. Do you see anything special about his technique, or is it more just, am I overthinking it? It's just that the man just has hammers, and he's
no, dude. It's
pounds.
Everybody at 265 has hammers. Curtis Blaydes has hammers. Curtis Blaydes will put out a regular dude looking at him wrong. Everybody at heavyweight can crack. Everybody at heavyweight, even on the lower end of the spectrum, can knock anybody out. But when you see a guy like Sergei Pavlovich, just like Mark said, his balance, the way his technique is very, very sharp and crisp. And you don't really see it a lot from heavyweights, especially because a lot of heavyweights tend to want to move out of the way of punches while they throw punches. So you see a lot of this crazy nonsense and guys throwing punches here and their fucking bodies are on the ground and all kinds of stuff. And Curtis Blaydes kind of throws like that sometimes. Junior Dos Santos, towards the end of his UFC run, was almost notorious for being sloppy like that. Pavlovich doesn't do that, man. And if you go back and you watch that fight, I can't remember the time frame exactly, but there's an exchange, a sequence where Pavlovich hits him with like a 4-piece, a 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, and it literally looks like if you took away the persona and just sort of took the framework of the body itself, it's literally like watching a machine shoot pistons out.
Yep. Yeah, so well said.
It's so crazy because that's the way it should be. Like as one of my coaches like to say, textbook. That is as textbook as it gets, man. Straight punches down the pipe. None of this like straight punch. Oh, I'm gonna come down and we're gonna come back. No, boom, right to his face. Boom, back to his face. And with power and with speed, and his feet never left the ground. He didn't over rotate. He was able to keep his distance. He didn't keep moving in when he knew that Curtis was against the cage. There are a lot of little fundamental details that make what Pavlovich did exceptional. And like Mark said, the fact that Curtis Blaydes just decided to be like, I will strike with Pavlovich is just it's asinine. It's literally what is it? Oh my God, the Wonder Boy fight with this fucking kid with Kevin Holland. How Kevin Holland decided to be like, yeah, nah, I'm gonna stand with him. I'm not gonna take him down. I'm gonna stand with one of the greatest kickboxers the UFC's ever seen. It's the same thing. We know Pavlovich has now had a record of wrecking dudes in the first round. I feel like I called first round KO last week, and
Probably did.
him just not taking that threat legitimate, I feel like, and really feeling his hands is doing him a disservice. He needs to wrestle, and the wrestling's got to get tighter. Because I'll tell you what, he almost got Derek Lewis again. That takedown that he tried to go for was very sloppy, and Pavlovich was like this close to landing an uppercut the same way Derek Lewis did. He's got to figure that out because he's gonna keep getting destroyed if he fights the way he's fighting.
So real quick,
You did pick first round last week, and I picked second, so you got me there. But either way, I just want to say props to us because, I mean, A, Blaydes was the favorite, but B,
was he really?
everywhere I looked, the pick was Blaydes. Every person I saw was
That's
picking Curtis
wild.
Blaydes. I think I saw one person picking Pavlovich besides us.
I picked
So-
I picked Pavlovich too, right?
You did too. Yep.
Thank you.
So I will take that for this show.
Just looking at his record, some things that stand out. First of all, his very first fight in the UFC was a loss. He got TKO'd by Overeem.
It was a short notice fight, if I remember right.
That is, of
He
course, his only loss.
yeah.
Also, just looking at it, some stupid percentage of his fights end in the first round. If it's 8, he has 19 fights. Only 1, 2, 3 of them have gone outside the first round. So do that calculation. Mark, you're fast at that probably.
Fuck, I didn't listen. Say that again.
19 total fights.
Mm-hmm.
Only 3 of them have gone past the first round. So what is that percentage of first round finishes?
Like 85.
Close, 84. That's pretty good.
Wow.
Thank you.
Damn, Mark, you should work with numbers.
So since his first fight in the UFC, which was a first round loss, he has finished all 6 subsequent opponents, all in the first round, all with punches. The man has anvils in his hand. Anvils. Okay.
Yep.
Let's talk about where I guess Pavlovich is kind of the obvious scenario that he's going to wait for the winner of Jones and Stipe, yes?
Yeah, I think really the only question at this point is if that fight is happening. Because if for any reason it doesn't, it could even be Pavlovich now.
Yeah,
could be.
that's really where we're at because the Jones and the Stipe, they're playing games. Like there's no real promo leading up to this fight. I know it's a ways away, but a fight like that, they'll throw little things in there here and there. We haven't gotten anything. Stipe went like dark for a week and a half, then Jones went dark for a week and a half, and it's been odd. So if one of them does drop out, Pavlovich is literally going to walk right into a title shot.
Well,
I'll tell you what, if John Jones, having the light heavyweight resume that he already has, obviously, moves up to heavyweight, and he beats Gane, then beats Stipe, then beats Pavlovich, and then maybe by that point would have Aspinall, who's kind of like the other guy that we haven't really seen anyone beat yet, and beats him, like the GOAT argument would not even, you shouldn't even talk about it anymore. It would become silly.
yes.
I think it's crazy he signed another 8-fight deal. We're going off the rails a little bit, but an 8-fight deal for John Jones.
I didn't even see that.
Well, that's how he came back.
I'm
This
saying
is-
I didn't see it was 8 fights. That's crazy.
It seems crazy, right? Like it seems like a long time at heavyweight that I didn't expect. I figured he'd do 3 fights, maybe 4, and then just be like, I'm the GOAT, bitches. And
I mean, he
walk
might
out.
still. It's not like he's tied to having to do them all.
Seems
but,
wild though to stay stuck in that contract like that, especially somebody like John Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's now
He's
talk
got
about
a chance for a mythical run.
let's talk about the guy who I have said for quite some time that I think would have been a great matchup for John Jones, that being Curtis Blaydes. You can disagree with me if you want.
I will.
You will, really? Interesting.
Oh,
It'd be interesting. It'd be
I
interesting.
wish we could have had this conversation, but I sadly think that we never will see this fight because this is just a Curtis Blaydes cycle, is that he wins a few and then he loses and he just can't quite get to the summit of the mountain that is a title shot. So, Mark, give me a name who you think should be next for Curtis Blaydes at heavyweight.
To me, it's Aspinall, just because it already happened and we didn't get a result. I mean, Blaydes versus Gane, of course, is also a great fight that you feel like we do need to see at some point in time here. But I would rather get the result of Blaydes and Aspinall settled.
Omar, what about you? You think Aspinall or somebody else?
So with Blaydes having gotten royally fucked up, I don't see him making a quick turnaround. And I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
no, I meant assuming they're talking Aspinall against Tibura. I meant assuming Aspinall wins that fight.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say because I know Aspinall was trying to get back in there pretty quickly now at this point and doing the June thing. But yes, I would definitely be down. I mean, at that point, it'd have to be the winner, right, of Aspinall Tai Tuivasa. But I guess there's an assumption there that Tibura, sorry, that Aspinall will walk away with it, which is fair.
Yeah, I shouldn't assume that. Who knows?
Yeah, man. I feel
Just
bad
my guy.
for Blaydes, man. Also, because I feel like there have been heavyweights in the past. I might be totally talking out of my ass. I feel like there have been heavyweights who have gotten title shots off of 3 or 4 fight win streaks, and he has had like 3 4-fight win streaks in the UFC. Blaydes.
Oh.
He goes on like a mini streak and then he gets a loss, and then a mini streak and then he gets a loss.
But this is my thing. It's like this is why I don't understand the John Jones conversation, because even if you talk about stylistic, first from a resume perspective, I don't see how anybody thinks that John Jones loses that fight. From a stylistic perspective, do people really think Blaydes is better at wrestling, technical wrestling, than John Jones? Because I don't. Look at the one. You would never in your motherfucking life see John Jones shoot a takedown the way that Curtis Blaydes has now done in 2 separate fights. Never.
He is
Absolutely
a great wrestler once he has a hold of you. His entries have never been thrilling.
And he has good power, though. Like, we've seen him double leg people. We've seen him literally launch dudes in the air on their sides. I'm not saying he's not a strong dude. He's massive. That is a massive human being. But John Jones is also now a massive human being. And we're talking about technique at this point. I would bet my house on John Jones wrecking that kid. 100%.
Sure. I'm not
What's
saying
interesting... Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I'm not saying I would pick Curtis Blaydes, but for me, it's simply a combination of his attributes and his skill set that I think would be a very interesting and intriguing matchup against Jones.
I think it would be the first time you see Curtis Blaydes on his back for round after round.
Could be.
It's interesting because he has only lost 2 knockout artists. Ngannou, Derek Lewis, Pavlovich. It's only these guys with the one-hitter quitter that he loses to, and John Jones ain't that. So that's kind of an interesting angle.
But no one has ever wrestled like John Jones. I mean, John Jones
I'm picking John Jones in that match.
Crazy.
Don't get me wrong. But, hey, I mean, he's not dead yet. If he could beat Aspinall, he could be in a Gane fight or a Stipe fight if Stipe lost to Bones. Like, he could be right there again very soon.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be one of these well-rounded guys that ends up really giving John a run for his money. These sort of specialist guys, John Jones makes these specialist guys look like they need to go back to school. But well-rounded guys who can kind of do a little bit of everything and kind of make Jones uncomfortable in a little bit of situations here. I think it's going to be guys like Aspinall. I think it's going to be guys like Pavlovich, even though I think Pavlovich eventually gets torn up in a grinder. It's going to be guys like Almeida who make their way to the top. Like, that's
an interesting one.
Yeah, dude.
Wow.
That to me, that's the worst fight in the division for John Jones. Almeida.
Almeida's scary.
I don't know that if his striking is enough to hang if he can't take Bones down. Aspinall intrigues me more just because he's so dangerous everywhere.
True.
But I don't know.
I like Almeida's sheer athleticism and youth.
Yeah,
against Jones.
I do too.
And size.
Even though his face is 50.
I'm going to say this. I'll say I would have been, and this might be hot take territory. I would have been more intrigued to see Curtis Blaydes against John Jones than Stipe Miocic.
Whoa.
The significance of Bones and Stipe sells me.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just thinking of skill sets and sheer attributes. I think Jones is going to make Stipe look like a light heavyweight.
Really?
I think Jones is going to power over Stipe.
It's very possible.
Dude, you know the other thing about Pavlovich? Same reach as John Jones. First time ever John Jones would not have a reach advantage.
I think they're off by like a half an inch or like an inch or something.
Oh, I thought I looked and it was 84 each.
I think Jones is 84 and a half.
Pavlovich's arms
Unless
are
it was
that
84 and a
long.
half.
Oh,
Oh,
my
Jones
God.
84 and a half. All right, but
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
practically.
No, it's the same thing.
I guess
it's a
John
technicality,
technically still would have a reach advantage.
but it is still crazy that he won't have the massive
Yeah.
reach advantage that he's always had.
Yeah, you never see that.
He still keeps the record though for the longest reach.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
fair.
Should we move on? Let's move on.
Yeah, we went off.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
went off.
let's do
there.
it. Okay, here we go. We're back. Okay, in the co-main event of this UFC fight night, in the middleweight division, Bruno Silva defeats Brad Tavares by TKO via knee and punch at 3:35 of round number 1. Omar, start us off this time. Give us your take of Bruno Silva getting it done by knockout.
I gotta say, I don't usually pat myself on the back, but this was one of those. When I was watching it, I was like, oh, Brad Tavares, it's not doing bad, doing pretty good. Oh, and there it is, and there it is. He was doing good until he wasn't doing good, and I feel like I said those exact words last week. It's the story of Brad Tavares for me, man. He looks good. You know, he looks good. He'll look comfortable. He'll be moving. He'll be throwing shots. He'll look great. And then for whatever reason, he gets cracked, and he just never comes back. Sad story. Bruno Silva, I think, really needed that win. It was a great performance from Bruno Silva, but it was just it's kind of what I expected from Brad Tavares, sadly.
Okay, Mark.
Yeah, this is why MMA is so fucking tough to pick because, as you guys know, I was a Bruno Silva guy on the come up, and if not for that Mearshart fight, I would have taken him to beat Brad here. But then he fights Gerald Mearshart, and he looks like an absolute bag of trash. So I had to hop off of that train just because it was so concerning how bad he looked. And he fucking goes and knocks out Brad Tavares. So that's MMA for you. But, I mean, Omar said it. Brad looked really sharp for most of that fight, like first 3 minutes, whatever it was. And he always does, like as you said as well. He always looks sharp in there. But as it was going on, Silva was landing the occasional range strike. And it felt like Brad was kind of just backing up and sometimes underestimating that he wasn't out of the space and he would get caught. Granted, he was still winning at those times, but then he ends up charging and he gets hit with that check right hook that friggin' rattled his jaw. And that's when Silva turned it up. And then when that blitz was happening, Tavares kept getting stuck with the fence behind him and he couldn't back up. And it was that same, he was never side to side in that fight to evade. It was always straight back. And then when he lost that space, it was the same thing. He kept thinking he was out of range and he would get caught on the end of punches. And it was just too many, and he couldn't freaking get Silva off him. So he goes down, clean right. I didn't love the stoppage. Like, yes, he got dropped, and then he ate another one on the ground, but his head was still up. He had just spun his body to try to swing his legs around. Like, I don't like a stoppage when a guy is that aware and that much moving. I would have loved to see him get a few more seconds at least, and maybe one more lands, and that's it. But it was a lot of awareness for me. But either way, big win for Bruno Silva. Looked like himself again, as opposed to the dude that fought Mearshart, and maybe that was just going to be a bump in the road here.
Yeah, man.
You know, every time something like this happens, and we're all texting each other on our thread and stuff like that, and we end up talking about it here. All I hear is just the dude from Mortal Kombat, Shang Tsung, just going, "Finish him." And I see Mark's face whenever things like that are happening. Like, the dude is done, he's knocked out, and then I just see Mark walking in the ring or walking in the octagon. Hey, finish him.
Dude, his head was up. He grabbed Silva's leg and spun his body out of the way, and the ref stopped the fight. Like, come on. I will stand by that.
Okay.
Hey, he's still spinning. Fucking finish him.
Omar, give me a name for Bruno Silva of where he should go next at middleweight.
Let me pull up the old rankings here that I have to use because Mark still is hoarding his.
One day there will be a website. One day.
One.
That dude even
day.
update his rankings anymore?
I don't know. It's like
man.
it's spotty, man. Sometimes he does, and sometimes he doesn't. But it just,
Yeah,
you know what? He
they're
must.
they're not
dude,
updated.
Dude must have a kid too.
Maybe.
You know.
Yeah, he stinks. They're not updated. They stink.
Yeah, they do stink. So why don't you tell me first, Mark? Where the hell is this kid?
Bruno?
That's right.
So he will be mentioned later in the pre rankings because he made a nice jump, but he's number 21 in my rankings at the moment.
All right. Well, you know what? If we're gonna have Bruno Silva on a win, maybe we have him with the winner of Caio Borralho and Michelle Oleksiejczuk, which is going on this weekend. I think that would be good.
Thought about that one. I went a different route. It feels a little wrong considering Bruno Silva lost to Gerald Meerschaert and Joe Pyfer just beat Gerald Meerschaert. But I want to say Silva and Pyfer, simply because Pyfer has kind of moved up the ranks real quickly here in only 2 fights. And Silva, as good as he's looked, he had this fucking weird-ass fight with Meerschaert that makes you, like, question what his deal is. So I just feel like they're an interesting test for each other where the dude who gets through that one, you can be like, all right, maybe he's pretty legit.
Yeah. Okay.
And it will be violence.
Yes. You want to talk about Brad Tavares?
Yeah, I'll keep it simple. Gerald
Yeah.
Meerschaert. They're both coming off losses. I feel like they're in similar spots. Vets, put them in there.
Okay, let's move on. You want to move on? Let's move on.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, in the lightweight division, Bobby Green versus Jared Gordon ends in a no contest due to an accidental clash of heads. I would call it more of an accidental battering ram of a skull against a skull. At 4:35 of round number 1, Mark, recap the end of this fight for our listeners who might not have seen it.
Yeah, this sucked, of course. It was a good fight while it lasted. I actually thought Jared Gordon was kind of fighting interestingly, making it competitive. I didn't see anything that made me doubt Bobby Green would win that fight ultimately. But yeah, then shit happens. Clear clash of heads. Bobby stepped in trying to throw kind of a lead left elbow. It was a little bit sloppily thrown, even the elbow itself. I mean, obviously then the head was not in a great spot and smashed into Jared Gordon right on his temple. So, you know, what can you do? I'm a fan of Bobby Green, but I don't know what in the world he's been talking about, saying like, yeah, but then Jared Gordon was still okay on the ground and he only went out after I hit him again. So, like, it should have counted. And what if he triangled me? Then they would have counted it then. Like, bro, the only reason he's on the ground is because you fucking headbutted the shit out of him. Like, yes. I get it that it was an accident, but we can't just give you the win. So I don't know what he's talking about. He's been in enough fights to understand that he can't just get free victories for headbutts. So I don't know. I mean, it's a super clear no contest to me. Maybe they'll run it back, but yeah.
Omar, what was your thoughts of how this fight played out? We were talking briefly before we went live here that to me it did not look good. It looked like he torpedoed his skull into Jared Gordon's skull. What were your thoughts?
So first, I want to say that I don't think it was intentional, and the reason I bring it up is because
no.
Bryce
I don't think
Mitchell.
it was intentional, but it just didn't look good, man.
Bryce Mitchell made the allegation that it was an intentional strike, that he
Really?
intended to headbutt him. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know. Bryce Mitchell went on a Twitter thing about it, but I don't think it was intentional. I do think Bobby Green has always fought very unorthodox, to say the least.
Yeah.
Sloppily, to say the worst. He's effective though, man. He's good at what he does when he gets things done, and a lot of his unorthodox things you wouldn't teach anybody, but it works for Bobby Green. When it happened, I could see the elbow. You can see the elbow. There was no doubt in my mind that was the strike that he was going for. But again, if we were trying to teach you how to throw a lead elbow, I would not teach you that way, right? Like no one would teach it to you that way. It was the sloppiest shit you could do. And on top of the sloppy technique from Bobby Green, you also had Jared Gordon reading who knows what and ducked inside instead of outside and basically their heads just went like this. So a lot of wrong reading, a lot of sloppy technique leads to accidents. This shit happens in the gym, and it happens in real fights. It was unfortunate, man. It was unfortunate, and I don't understand. I understand the annoyance from Bobby Green, I guess, but I don't understand his take. His take is odd. They definitely should run it back though, and just figure that out and let Bobby Green get some more money.
Yeah, it was weird that he just followed Jared Gordon to the ground as though it was a legitimate strike, and now he's trying to finish him on the ground with strikes, and then he kind of did.
I think he thought it was a legitimate strike.
You think
no,
so?
he said he said that he felt it on his head, but his argument is I've been headbutted before. He had a whole tirade on Ariel's show. Like he said, he's been hit in the head before. Motherfuckers need to man up and suck it up and all this other kind of stuff. And things happen and it's a fight. I don't know what y'all want and stuff about people being pussified now. And
oh, jeez,
I'm telling you, it's not a take that I subscribe to personally. I think it's a kind of a crazy take.
It was a headbutt.
As soon as it happened, and my parents are here visiting from New York, and of course, spending time with my parents on a Saturday night means they're watching UFC. So we're watching these fights, and it's a great fight, just like we were talking about. And as soon as it happened, I was like, "Oh, it's a no contest." And my dad's like, "What's a no contest?" And so we went into a whole thing about it. But I knew it right away. You could tell right away, and the fact that he's even thinking that there was any other result other than a no. And first of all, the whoever was managing that situation there did a horrible job, because the announcer started
letting
going
Joe
off.
Martinez in the right. Yeah.
Joe Martinez is in there. He's like, "Yeah, I'm about to do my job," and he starts going off, and he's like, "Wait, I don't have a result at all." And so then he goes back out, and it was one of those really messy, sloppy situations all across the board.
You could hear him live go, "Yeah, they stopped me," right after he started announcing it.
I didn't even hear that part.
And then Felder's getting shit because Felder's yelling about how it's so bad luck because it looked like the ref was letting it be, a win for Bobby Green, and how it should have been a no contest. And Bobby Green's all over Felder, being like, "Oh, you're pulling for your boy," because him and Jared Gordon are boys. But it's like, bro, he was right. He was 100% right.
Well, so was Dan Hardy, and Dan Hardy caught some shit.
What do you mean?
Who was the one
Dan
that
Hardy.
started? It was Dan Hardy.
Yeah.
Dan Hardy started going off on one of the
Herb.
referees for something.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that fight.
And it didn't go well for Dan Hardy. So
When Herb was like, "No, you have to kill him."
please, and he's just telling Hardy,
He was
"Please
finishing.
sit down."
That was Mortal Kombat. Yeah, Herb Dean went Mortal Kombat. It was like, finish him.
They've all had their moments, man.
And Dan Hardy lost his shit.
Yes.
Just like Paul Felder, honestly. Paul Felder was the same. It was a similar thing.
Oh, come on. Okay, let's move on. Do you guys? Should they just run it back? Are we going to match
They got to
them
run
up?
it. They got to run it back.
I'm
They
saying
should run it back.
Yeah.
Poor Jared Gordon, man. 2 fights in a row that have ended pretty controversially.
Yes. True.
Okay, let's throw the rest of these fights into our lightning round. But this week's going to be a little different. It's going to be an Omar lightning round. Omar, give us a lightning-ish recap of the rest of this UFC Fight Night card.
All right. First fight is Ismael Lucindo versus Brogan Walker. Decision, unanimous. I'll tell you this: Lucindo is a bad girl, man. Her hands are absolutely ridiculously fast. I think the thing that really surprised me out of that fight was her takedowns. Brogan Walker was getting lit up left and right, but Brogan Walker, I think like we talked about last week, I had it first round KO for Lucindo. Brogan Walker is tough though, and she stuck it out for 3 rounds, and you could see each round was getting progressively worse. And by the time we got to the 3rd round, Brogan Walker was looking at the clock, looking to see how much longer she had to endure this shit. Lucindo is a problem, man. Her hand speed is crazy. Her takedowns are apparently pretty solid, and she's got some good fight IQ. So I'm still on the train. I loved it.
Thanks, man.
Next on the list, Jeremiah Wells with a split decision over Matthew Semmelsberger. I'm really weirded out by this fight. So, Mark, you didn't watch this fight, right?
No, I didn't see any UFC fights besides the 3 that we did, unfortunately, which is why you're running with this.
Yeah, I didn't know if you saw little clips or anything like that.
Oh, I saw some highlights. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Jeremiah Wells got sparked for the beginning of almost every round, but definitely for the first two. And by basically the 4.5, or by like the 3.5 minute mark, Wells was able to kind of take Semmelsberger down and kind of work on nullifying Semmelsberger's game, and he would get back up, and Wells would go back for a takedown. But Semmelsberger had done so much damage at the beginning of that first round. He did damage at the beginning of the second round, and two judges scored at 30-27 for Semmelsberger, and only one judge scored it for Semmelsberger.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very, very. I mean, I can see when I was watching the fight, I could see things were going to get messy. But even after it was announced, I can't tell you that Wells won 3 rounds out of that fight. That seems crazy to me.
MMA decisions is strongly for Semmelsberger, like 70%.
Wow. Yeah. The first 2 rounds were, I thought, pretty good for Semmelsberger, to be honest.
Round 1 is over 80% Semmelsberger.
Dude.
Round 2 is 77%, and then round 3 is Wells.
Literally the first 2 seconds of the fight, as they're coming towards each other, like Jeremiah Wells is like, "Oh, who's Semmelsberger?" and just walks forward, and Semmelsberger cracks him in the face with a right hand, like, "My name's Matthew, sir," and just like Wells was just on Queer Street from there, and Semmelsberger went to work for a little bit until Wells got his shit back together. And I think Wells being so strong was the reason why he didn't get finished in the end. But I don't think he won that fight personally.
Okay, interesting. I gotta watch it.
Next on the list here, we have Christos Giagos versus Ricky Glenn. Man, it was a short-lived fight, but the accuracy from Giagos to pop him right in the temple and just shut off Ricky Glenn's body was pretty nasty. So not much you can say, man. Giagos got some decent hands, some good accuracy. Got to keep an eye out for him.
What else?
Next on the list, Montel Jackson knocks out Hani Yahya in the first round.
Did I tell you to take this knockout to the bank? I told you.
Dude, this was pretty much how we kind of called it last week. Yahya was smaller, man, and a lot visibly smaller. He was thicker, but shorter, and having a really tough time trying to get inside, especially with striking not being his forte. He was very, very sloppy trying to move inside and paid heavily for it. There were moments where you thought his jits might work. He got it down. It got down to the ground a couple times. I think he started working for Kimuras at one point and different options. But Montel Jackson was on top of it and got out of there when he had to, or when he had the opportunity to, I should say. And when it was on the feet, he was piecing him up, man. And Hani Yahya does not like getting hit. Like, there are guys who get hit and they're still in it, and there's a lot of hits that they can take and not worry about. Hani Yahya closes his eyes and says, "Take me, Lord," when he gets hit. So it did not work for him, and he gets knocked out. Next on the list, yes, my girl Norma Dumont, baby, let's go. Unanimous decision over Carol Rosa. I would love to tell you that Norma Dumont styled on this girl, but it was a hard-fought fight. I thought she had a little bit more control overall throughout the first 2 rounds for sure. I thought the striking was definitely on her side in the first round. She picked it up in the second round. And I think a good majority of the third round you could call for Norma Dumont. But towards the end of that fight, Carol Rosa put the beats on Norma Dumont. Like the last, I want to say 10, 15 seconds, hit her with some clean shit. At one point, she smashed her with a spinning back elbow that I don't know what Norma is made out of, but that would have crumbled anybody else. There was some real nasty stuff landed at the very end of that fight that Carol Rosa should have probably put on early on and didn't. So good win for Norma Dumont, and still the queen of the 145-pound division, the real queen of the 145-pound division.
Can you call it?
Let's go.
Yeah.
She's almost in purgatory at this point. Like, I want to be like, can we let her go fight like Pacheco or Kayla Harrison or Cyborg or something? Like, what is she doing in the UFC?
If we're gonna give Masvidal a BMF belt, we got to give Norma Dumont something. Something.
Man.
All right, next on the list, Muhammad Usman versus Junior Tafa. Unanimous decision for Usman. This was a really really frustrating fight. Like, I am sitting watching this fight like, bruh, what the fuck are you all doing? Everybody involved here. Usman needs to go to Thailand. Somebody needs to book his ass a trip now. Send his ass the fuck over there and make him strike for like 3 months straight, because the dude is awful. He is god awful. And honestly, if Junior Tafa, by the way, I am convinced that is a different man than Justin Tafa. I'm finally sold.
Yes.
But if Junior Tafa was tighter with his strikes, that was a murder. That whole fight would have been Usman all over the floor getting destroyed. There was one sequence at the beginning of the first round where Tafa was against the cage, and when I say came razor close to landing a knee on Usman's face, I mean Usman, if he had hair, that shit would have blew right by. It was a lot. It was too sloppy from Tafa because he had him on ice skates for like a round and a half. And Usman didn't know what was going on. He was trying to go for takedowns, eventually got some. And that was really the story of the fight. Junior Tafa piecing him up on the feet, Usman finding a takedown and nullifying the fight for a majority of it, allowing him to come away with a ridiculous unanimous decision, I guess. But I get it. It is a valid win based on the scorecards and all this other stuff. But he did not win that fight, like, as a fight. Junior Tafa fucked him up a lot. Yeah, it was a really frustrating fight to watch all the way around. But I have a feeling that's going to be the story of Muhammad Usman. I don't see it, man. I do not see it. He's going to get hurt somewhere. But that's for another day, I guess. William Gomis versus Francis Marshall. This one was another one, man, that was like difficult just because I wanted Francis Marshall to win. I had Francis Marshall only winning the third round. Gomis was just a little bit more aggressive, a little bit ahead of the curve. Was basically like a step ahead of Fire Marshall, which made me a little sad. But I had Gomis winning the first 2 rounds and then Fire Marshall winning the third round. And I guess the judges had Fire Marshall winning rounds 2 and 3. One judge had him winning 2 and 3. Nah. Fire Marshall lost 1 and 2, dog. It was a good fight, a competitive fight, but Gomis was clearly for me winning those first 2 rounds.
I can't tell you how much I hate that his name is Fire Marshall.
I thought it was fucking brilliant, especially considering he's a firefighter.
It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me feel like he's a kid playing dress up or something. I
mean, he looks like a child.
I don't know why.
He's very, very tiny, this man. All right, next on the list, Baturgel Dana versus Brady Highstand. Dog. This shit was a dog fight, okay? I don't know if I saw this going this way, personally. But Brady Highstand got some fucking nuts. This man stuck out and ate a lot of shit in this fight. He definitely set himself up for success in the beginning, kind of showing Dana, I'm here to fight. Hit him with a good head kick that Dana was like, oh, did the fight start? Okay. All right, here we go then. And it kept going on. You know, it was a back and forth battle. You could honestly throw a lot of those rounds in the air. Or at least the second round, you could throw that one in the air for sure. And then we get to the third round, and Highstand gets him in a position. I think he cracks him. I had to write it down. This fucking round, this thing was crazy. Yeah, so he hits him with a right hand, takes him down, and then eventually Highstand moves to He-Stand. He-Stand? I've been saying Highstand.
He-Stand, yeah.
He-Stand. So He-Stand ends up going to a dominant position on the ground and just starts battering him. One after another, and Dana is just eating them. Not defending, not doing anything, eating them. And eventually the ref calls it. And it's like, for me personally, dude, I could definitely have seen those scorecards going to Dana, and like before that point, it was definitely one of those fights you did not want to go to the scorecards, honestly, for either guy. So good on He-Stand for finishing that fight and closing it out. And both of them look great, though, man. It was a great fight all the way around, but I'm glad I picked He-Stand because the ending of that fight was great.
Nice.
That's it, baby. Lightning. done.